As the quarterback carousel spins in 2025, we've got tons of veteran quarterbacks. Is there enough, though, to fill all the needs from the super quarterback needy teams? And who are the dark horse quarterback needy teams? There's not many draft picks. There are a couple guys, though. Where are all the fits and quarterback landing spots in 2025? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Get those mailbag questions in this week at those handles on the socials, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Welcome to all the everydayers out there, and welcome to the new listeners alike. Please hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up. Let us know you stopped by on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And before we get to the quarterbacks, I want to let everybody know about today's sponsor. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just get started at FanDuel.com. All right, so there's a million ways to slice this as the quarterback carousel gets ready. There are numerous teams that not only need a quarterback, but like flat out don't have a guy to play for them.
I think there's 6 right now that basically don't have a guy.
Yeah, so let's name the suspects here, and then let's start to put some teams to players and see where the fits actually are. So if we're looking at just the clear quarterback needy teams, and then we'll talk about which quarterbacks are available, and then draw those lines. Who needs a quarterback, Matt? And can we start with your Pittsburgh Steelers? Because not only do they need a quarterback, do they have one under roster, period? Like, you need 3 quarterbacks in Pittsburgh, right?
Right. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is currently the only one under contract in Pittsburgh. And that was something that they did like a month ago, or as an exclusive, whatever, one of those weird deals. So no, they have nobody.
DTR from Cleveland?
No. I'm sorry. It's Skylar Thompson.
Skylar Thompson. Yeah.
That's how impactful it is.
One of those guys who's probably not going to make a huge impact. DTR in the Cleveland Browns might start week 1 right now for the Browns.
Right.
You got a lot of third string quarterbacks on your mind right now, because that's who these teams are rostering currently.
Right. So they basically don't have a rosterable quarterback. Even their third string dude, one of the bad Allens, is not under contract. There's the really good Allen quarterback, and then there's the bad Allens. He was the bad Allen, one of the bad Allens. Anyway, I have these 6 teams. The Steelers, which I know we're going to have a little conversation about, because they kind of stand alone. They're actually not terrible, where it's all the other bad teams. I got the Browns. They don't have a quarterback. I'm not going with DTR or Watson for that matter. Vegas, at least O'Connell's in the building and probably will be in the league for the next 5 to 10 years, but that's not the answer. Tennessee, even the most optimistic of Levis people can't possibly think that that's okay. I mean, Steelers and both New York teams. I think those are pretty clear in New York.
Yeah. So we got Browns, Giants, Jets, Raiders, Titans, Steelers that have to add some level of high-end startable quarterback. Titans, I guess you could make a little bit more of the argument. I think that you let it go with Levis, but we'll go down that road.
Maybe. I would understand that if you did Hunter or Abdul Carter and build everything else and see one more year and probably end up back in the top 5 and do it again next year. I could understand that.
And, I think we know the suspects as far as draftable players go. We got Cam Ward, who seems to be consensus quarterback 1, Shedeur Sanders, who seems to be consensus quarterback 2, a huge gap between, maybe it's Jackson Dart, whatever other quarterback you think is quarterback 3. Those guys probably, it'd be shocking to me if any of those quarterbacks sniff round 1 and probably even sniff round 2. So you're talking about a lot of good backup style quarterbacks in the NFL draft, mid-round types, but those are the 2 first-round guys at quarterback, and they might not be top 5 guys for every team, and who knows, maybe not any team. We'll see where Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders end up going.
So let me stop you super quick, BP, because I think those 2, it's safe to say, whether they're opening day starters or not, they will be the plan for their new team, at least. Whether it's one of these 6 or not, at least they'll be the plan. maybe Daniel Jones starts the season, or like Penix didn't get in right away, but obviously he was the plan. He's going to be a first-round pick. So those are two of the seats that are going to be filled in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Those and they're going to be paired likely with a stopgap of some, and so if it was Tennessee, the stopgap would probably just be Levis, who's already there,
or O'Connell, or
right, and O'Connell in Las Vegas. But for the other teams, they might add a free agent quarterback, and even then, if a team signs or trades for, in this case, Kirk Cousins, and we'll see how that situation goes. If you bring in Kirk Cousins, I mean, the Falcons just showed you it doesn't matter. You can still draft a quarterback top 8, right? So it's not going to affect you in the draft just because you brought in Cousins. So there is a fit for a lot of these veteran quarterbacks, even if that team drafts a first round quarterback. So the free agents or potential trade for quarterbacks that are available, Matt, and I have enough names to fill the teams, but I don't know if the fits
Me too, but
yeah. So who do you have? We got Aaron Rodgers, who's a big question mark if he's even going to play next year, right? But he's available. I don't even know if it's gone through yet, but he's going to be released by the New York Jets. Both of the starters last year for the Steelers, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, are both free agents. They were both on what 1-year contracts last year, right? I mentioned Cousins. You got Sam Darnold coming off a huge year with the Minnesota Vikings. And then a couple of other names I'll throw out there that are veterans. Are Stafford and Carr available, or are they not?
Here's how I kind of lumped it in different ways. So, all right, let's go back 2 seconds here.
Yes.
There were 6 open seats, right? I think the Rams and Saints could just shuffle the seats. If you lose Carr, if you lose Stafford, you filled a seat over here, but you opened a new one. You know what I mean? It's not like they're not going to go with Rattler or Jimmy and be happy about it. And then there's 2 other teams, and maybe I'm missing one, that could come from nowhere and draft a guy earlier than we think on day 2.
The dark horse teams.
But I don't know. I can't spot that off the top of my head. But my other 2 are the Colts. Are they thrilled? They can't just give it to Richardson and be thrilled. They have to do something. I mean, sign Daniel Jones or do something. And I wonder about Seattle. Is it time to at least draft Jackson Dart in the Levis neighborhood at the top of round 2 or something like that?
You're
so
okay
those
with your guy now, but
like
a stopgap. You got to
be aggressive
in the future. Develop the next guy.
Could be aggressive. So those 4 teams probably do something. Maybe the Rams just sit on Stafford. Maybe the Saints just sit on Carr. But if they move, they at least fill one of the open seats.
Yes.
So my available quarterbacks are 2 rookies. They're their own neighborhood. Darnold, to me, stands alone because whoever pays him is going to say that's my answer.
In his prime, too.
In his prime, he's going to be expensive.
It might not be a $50 million contract.
Right.
But the Baker Mayfield sort of this guy showed enough. He's going to be my starting quarterback. And it's not just stopgap for 1 year. And we're not going to go sign Darnold and then draft Ward. We're going to sign Darnold because he's going to be here for 3 years.
If that's the Raiders or the Titans, they're out of the market in the first round, probably.
Yes.
So I think he stands alone. Although if Minnesota franchises him, that could gum up the works a little bit here. But that they're not going to roll with McCarthy and Darnold. If they franchise him, they're going to move one of the 2, which is probably Darnold. So he at least fills one spot, in my opinion.
Can we eliminate that? No way they would just keep Darnold and trade away JJ McCarthy, right? Because I think teams would line up.
I do too. I mean, I doubt that's the case, but you at least have to have the conversation inside the building. So then it gets hairy after that, though. You named them. Fields and Wilson. But are they definitely, I mean, hey, Giants fans, if I said you get Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, are you like, oh, my problems are solved forever?
Well, if I'm a Giants fan, I would have been like, why didn't you get Justin Fields 2 years ago, right? Or last year? Or,
And I guess Wilson picked the Steelers over the Giants. They were
did he? Okay, I didn't know if
I think so.
Well, I liked the Justin Fields Dable thing. I thought the Bears should have hired Dable to coach Fields, like whenever that was, 3 or 4 years ago, when Dable got hired by the Giants instead. And I guess they interviewed Dable, but I thought that, like, if you're trying to find a coach to fix Fields and you want him to have that leap from like, oh man, things are weird, let's find a quarterback a guru that can fix our quarterback like he did to Josh Allen in Buffalo, Brian Daboll was the fit there, and they were able to. So they couldn't figure out an offensive coordinator for Fields, and so I don't know if that ship sailed or not. But if you're the Giants, let's pause here because
we got a lot to talk about, right?
Yeah, because when we start getting specific with teams, I think the Giants and
I want to do that later because I just want to even just name the candidates and lump them into boxes here.
Let's continue naming the candidates next, and then we'll get into the teams. And I'm going to start with the Steelers and the Giants when we get into teams. I think those are the two most obvious teams in what the plan should be. The answer might be different, but I know what the plan should be for the Steelers and Giants because of where they are, and then we'll get to the rest of those teams and the fits and who are the best fits in this quarterback carousel in 2025. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to stay in the action than on FanDuel. And I love this time of year. NBA really starts getting going after the playoffs. You got the college tournament upcoming, Major League Baseball. The spring training is getting going, and I love me some Major League Baseball, and that'll be it's the soundtrack of the summer every single day with baseball. And I love the way that they play 162 games, and there's something just about every day except for a couple days before and after the All-Star break in the Midsummer Classic. And of course, NFL season's over, but you can bet on the next Super Bowl champion at FanDuel, and you can bet on a ton of draft props as well at FanDuel. So all you got to do is go to FanDuel right now, and new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets, and stay in on the action all through the NFL offseason. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, who are the rest of the quarterbacks as you see it that are or should be available for teams out there this offseason?
All right, here's my categories. 2 first-round rookies. Boom, they're going to fill 2 seats. Darnold's going to fill a seat. The 2 Steeler guys, but we don't know they're good. You know what I mean? They're options, and chances are in this quarterback climate, they're probably going to be opening day starters somewhere, I would say. But uncontested, I don't know about that. Fields has injury history. Wilson's old. Neither one's great. And then there's 2 guys that kind of stand together. You mentioned them, Rodgers and Cousins. They're old. They're not for everyone. If I'm a terrible team, do I want Rodgers or Cousins? Do we know both are going to play this year? I assume Cousins is. I assume both are, but they're far from long-term answers to say the least. And then I have Carr and Stafford as my trade guys. And then I think, especially trade for Stafford, you're pretty happy, but maybe use a 3rd-round pick. Carr, your fan base isn't doing cartwheels. And then down the line is Winston and Daniel Jones. That maybe they're placeholders, maybe they're competition for Fields or Richardson or something like that. But no one's going to be like, that's my guy. Yeah, or that's the next Sam Darnold reclamation project.
For my purposes in this conversation, I think we leave – once we get to that tier of Winston and Daniel Jones, we leave them out of the conversation because they're not a big enough impact. And I really think the Vikings, and it was probably smart on their part. I think they told us what their plan is. They're going to have Daniel Jones be the backup in the break in case of emergency veteran quarterback. Darnold's going to be somewhere else, and it's a JJ McCarthy era.
I totally agree
with the Vikings. So I think I would take all of that off the table, including the Vikings, McCarthy, and that means Darnold is the prime. In his prime quarterback that is probably the free agent guy that you're going to be like, he's going to be our guy for a little while.
Yeah, we're going to pay him a 4-year deal, 3-year deal, and with intents of him filling the hole, filling that need.
Rodgers and Cousins are slightly different in that Cousins would probably take any job just so he could be a starter somewhere because it's not going to be in Atlanta, but he's not a free agent. And
the Browns keep getting linked to him because they have no money, and it's a Russell Wilson contract where it's like $1 million a year, which is appealing.
And for Cousins, you want to be a backup in Atlanta or starter in Cleveland? He'd probably be like, I'll be a starter somewhere.
Or maybe if Carr gets traded, since the Saints have no money, they grabbed Cousins, somebody like that.
Yeah, and so for Rodgers, it's like,
who does he want to play for?
Do you go play for the Browns, or do you just retire? There's no good teams. There's no teams you could project with Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback to be playoff teams, except the Pittsburgh
Steelers.
So that's why, in my opinion, the Pittsburgh Steelers run the 2025 quarterback carousel as far as the veteran quarterbacks go, because anybody who's available and a quarterback would be out of their minds if they didn't want to choose the Steelers first out of all those teams.
Including Stafford, I think you mean too, right?
Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Wilson, and Fields would both want to return and be the starter. Fields won't want to come back if Wilson's there, or Wilson. I guess if Wilson,
they don't want to compete.
So Wilson doesn't really care, but they won't want to compete, right? So
yeah, they both want to be the clear guy
with those guys again.
I don't. If it was Wilson, Fields would not come back. They love each other. They're good buddies, but I just think he says, I'd rather go back up Anthony Richardson and maybe beat him out, or something like that.
So if the Steelers run this, which I suspect they do, because I think every quarterback would choose the Steelers over those other situations. Stable franchise, good ownership, good head coach. You could you'd be a starting quarterback for a historic franchise and be a playoff team. That is,
they're clearly better than those other 5 open spots.
That is such a better situation than any of the other 5 teams we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I hope some of my listeners from the local media believe that, because I get every day, who on earth would want to play for this middling franchise that never throws the ball, and Arthur Smith? And I'm like, do you have any clue what else the other options are? It's better than going for the Browns.
Yeah, about the team that hasn't won for your entire life. How about that?
Right. Going to the playoffs isn't terrible.
I get that a lot locally here too with Kyle Shanahan. Fire Kyle Shanahan. I was like, okay, let's slow down. Like maybe think Kyle Shanahan needs to be better at this. Niners can improve here and there, but my goodness, he can get a lot worse than where you're at. So that's it. That's local fan bases will be that way for sure.
Last week, someone put a Fire Tomlin billboard up on the south side of Pittsburgh. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Anyway. So Steelers run this. So
I agree.
That means they get their choice. So what is the Steelers' choice at quarterback then?
Well, we know they kind of move like a glacier. They are not going to be a super reactive organization. The owner at his final press conference, wrapping up the season, and he's the last. Mr. Rooney is the office at the end of the hall that all big decisions go through. I mean, he is involved. Now, he's not the dictator so much, but he is going to put his stamp on whatever decision they make. But his exact words were, I would prefer to bring back one of the 2 from last year. Now, to your point, I believe if they put a reasonable contract in front of either one of them, they would sign it immediately. Because if I'm them, I'd rather run it back here without the other guy than go to the Raiders or Jets. You know what I mean?
Especially Fields. He's like, can I just stay with the same team and get a second coordinator?
For once.
Like the first time ever in my career.
Right.
Same offense twice.
Yeah. And this is just a hunch. I don't know this, but I think the coaching staff prefers Fields and ownership prefers Wilson. But that's just an educated guess. Wilson says all the right things. He looks like a QB1, great in the locker room. But I think coaches say, give me Fields. I want to turn him into something. And I do know Tomlin really has an affinity for a running quarterback. Because a defensive guy, he hates playing against running quarterbacks.
I could see that, the dynamism that Fields has. But, man, Wilson flat out won the job. How could you be on that coaching staff and think that Fields is the better option in the short term? Maybe Fields is just younger and you think, okay, we can sign him.
But the end was ugly.
Yeah.
For all involved. In a 5-game losing streak against good teams.
That's true. Yeah. So maybe Wilson won the job and then lost it.
And kind of lost it. Right. That's possible.
Neither one changes your plans in the draft, but the Steelers are drafting 21 as well, which is why the Steelers also, not only are they the best team and probably the preferred landing spot for all these quarterbacks, they're also not going to draft the first round quarterback.
No, I don't think so. I do think they could draft, Tyler Shuck or, the Ohio State dude or something like that, especially if Wilson's there, they might take a day 2 guy.
It sounds like you personally, or I don't know if this is you personally, or you think the Steelers would be much more likely to sign Wilson or Fields than Rodgers, or even trade for Stafford than sign Rodgers?
I think those. I'm going to be down at the facility tomorrow, but they're not going to invite me into the meetings. Trust me.
Okay, thanks.
But I do think those talks are ongoing. Like I said, this organization kind of moves at a glacier's pace, and they don't make decisions until they have to, which is, treated them well. I don't know how you don't inquire about Stafford, though.
If he's
he's better than all these dudes.
and we've talked about this. It's like, first of all, how is he available? I don't know what the Rams are doing, because this isn't the year to go draft a guy either. They unless they secretly, and I don't remember if it was Breer or Schefter or somebody. They're like, yeah, Jimmy. Do they really just kind of love Jimmy Garoppolo? And they're like, no, we're cool with Jimmy G for a year. You just won the division. You're in the playoffs. You played the Eagles better than anybody in the playoffs.
I'm not
and then you're
going
to move away from your quarterback.
If you want to buy 10 years and pick up a second and a fifth for Stafford and pay Darnold, that I understand. You get 10 years younger. McVay puts his hands on a younger, talented, ascending quarterback, and you go from there because you didn't want to pay Stafford. But if I'm the Steelers, I think the ones that give me the best chance to win are clearly Stafford, Rodgers, and Wilson. Who's better? I guess Rodgers. I mean, I
would take Rodgers over Wilson.
Yeah.
And kind of talking to you now, I get why you would say, okay, let's go Fields and then draft the wrong guy. But that's probably the avenue why your Steelers
the lowest floor.
A little frustrated and a little
mad.
Right. They're like, no, we want something better. We don't want that same old thing.
Burrow twice and Lamar twice, and trying to beat Mahomes. Right. Exactly. That's the frustration. And just knowing ownership, they don't ever want to be 5-12, and they never are. But Fields could get you there. Wilson and Rodgers won't get you there. You know.
That's true.
But that also frustrates the fan base.
Rodgers got the Jets there.
He did, but I don't know that he could get Tomlin. Could he drag Tomlin down to 4 or 5 wins?
I don't know.
I mean, Duck couldn't. Rudolph couldn't. Pickett couldn't.
I do think Rodgers is better than Wilson. Right.
I do too. It's just so much involved with him, though. You know, is he going to run the Arthur Smith offense? I mean, maybe you get Devontae Adams to come with him. That part I like. You know.
Next, that brings us to the New York Giants. And
they're attractive to me too. They would be my second choice if I was a free agent.
Let's get into them next because they're fascinating because of where they are and what they have to do this offseason. So Giants next. We'll talk about the rest of the fits and who goes to the Browns, the Raiders, Jets, Tennessee Titans as well, who have the number 1 pick in the draft. So they're a super important team that has control over their destiny if they want to go that route as well. Next. Okay, Matt. We didn't get a name. Who's the Steelers quarterback?
Oh, I answer
sounds
this
like you're going to
day.
get Fields.
Except ownerships, I think, wants Wilson. And I say this all the time on the air. Like, if you made me either one's lawyer and and the judge and jury was Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, Arthur Smith, and Mr. Rooney, I could make strong cases for my client. You know, I mean, maybe Fields is 10 million, 12 million a year and actually is the long-term answer. You know, like, that's the beauty of him.
If the Rams called and said, pick 21, does it? Stafford's your quarterback.
No, but I think a 2 and a 4 would, or something like that. You know, 2 and change.
Which is why I think the Stafford story is not about Stafford's available and being shopped. I think the Stafford story is the New York Giants called the Rams, and they're like, we got stuff we could offer. Like, we might offer number 3 for Stafford because we don't care because we're going to get fired.
Yeah, throw us a third with them or something.
The Steelers want to give you 21. We'll give you pick 3 in the stinking draft, Rams. We are going to be fired. I'm the GM that's going to be fired if I don't figure out quarterback, and drafting Cam Ward is not going to save my job. That's what I think is fascinating. And ownership said it on camera. Like, the New York Giants are on the hot seat, coach and GM. They got to figure out quarterback, and drafting a guy isn't going to get them to enough wins to save their jobs. So I think that's the Stafford story, is it comes from the Giants side, and the Giants might be willing to give up a lot to get Stafford, and is clearly the best option for them because they need to win right now, and he's the best quarterback if he is available.
I tend to think so too. You know, like, if I'm the Rams, that's a team I want to talk with, you know, for sure too. Now, someone might cut and paste what is about to come out of my mouth and make me look really, really stupid around Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Giants with Stafford are a playoff team-ish. They have a defense. I mean, Dexter Lawrence, and you bring Andrew Thomas back, throw into Neighbors. especially if you could hold on to 3, which I think you probably could. But
the division is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make the argument for sure that Stafford and the Giants, like, so Wilson or Fields, Steelers, Stafford, New York Giants, like,
and then Darnold, the Rams. I don't think the Rams just sit around and do nothing if they trade Stafford. I think they end up with like Darnold or somebody good.
I could see that. And that might be the thing for the Rams, is if you're the Rams, you're like, okay, we're only going to trade Stafford because he's 37 years old, and we can get something overwhelmingly good from the New York Giants. And it might not be the number 3 pick, but the Giants might say,
but it's going to be,
hey,
nice draft capital,
our high 2 and next year's one. And the Rams are like, oh, next year's one? Because that could be Arch Manning if the Giants go really south, and Stafford's elbows hang
on if they go to the playoffs too.
Right. So that could be a really interesting one, and the Rams are not afraid to make moves, and the Rams might say to themselves, look, man, we'll be okay with Darnold, and that'll get us through this season, and then he can be the stopgap for the guy we draft next season, and then we're rolling for a 10-year process, not just a 1-2 year process with Stafford. So I guess that's really, it would have to be a pretty darn good offer, and I don't think the Steelers 2nd and 4 would even budge me up. I'm the Rams, right? Yeah. So New York Giants for Stafford or nothing. I feel like that's kind of where that story is, and
I lean that way too.
But like the Rams are too good. Why would you get rid of the best quarterback available for less than a massive?
They're a smart organization that might have a desperate organization on the ropes and can cash out now and have Darnold lined up. But that maybe that just happens just 12:01 the day free agency opens. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just know that I know nothing about pop culture. I can't even say it. And, what these guys do off the field. But I know Stafford's wife is an influence. Kelly, I think her name is. And I know she had medical stuff and she does mattress commercials with them and all that. But she's been vocal in the media. And some podcasts I was listening to implied that she would like to get to the great big city of New York, too, for whatever reason.
I could buy it. Maybe Stafford's leading it. Maybe he's like, finish our career somewhere over there. With the Jets.
LA's, not
the Jets open up.
And another side note, again, I'm talking wives here. Russell Wilson's married to a very famous Sierra, and maybe should want to go to New York. I don't know. Russell Wilson's wife might be worth more than him.
Do the Jets get the Steelers sloppy seconds? Like whichever player.
That's what I'm thinking too. That's what I'm thinking.
Wilson or Fields ends up with the Jets in a short term sort of a let's just see what our team is and evaluate this year, because the Jets are in a rough spot because they're behind. They can't sit at 7 and expect they're going to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. So if you're the Jets and you want a rookie quarterback, you're trading up. And they're probably the team that would trade up. If I had to guess, there was a team that was going to go up to get a quarterback in the draft. Are those quarterbacks worth it? Or if not, you're sitting back, you're evaluating, and I guess Fields and Wilson could be plausible short-term starter for you there in New York.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. I mean, Stafford to the Giants, Wilson to the Jets. Yeah.
So Stafford. So does Darnold do anything for you if you're the Giants? Or do you just hope?
No, and does he want to go back to the Big Apple?
That's true.
I wouldn't think
a lot of people thought they should have drafted him instead of Saquon in the first place. That probably
right
there either. So.
He dealt with that media, and it's a different world. I keep thinking about Tennessee, the Raiders in particular. Or the Rams if Stafford goes. I think that if Stafford goes, that's a great landing spot.
I didn't think about the Darnold to LA. Like that's where he's from, California kid.
Yeah,
would be the perfect fit.
Kid loved to work with McVay.
For the Rams, he's been in that offense for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah.
With Shanahan and then with O'Connell.
I know moving on from Stafford sounds crazy, but you just rebuild an offensive line through the draft. Puka's young. Kupp's going to go. You might have a nice young roster with all those picks you get from Stafford and your own and a new era,
And you're better for it in the long term.
A year or two from Stafford,
now, maybe you're not as good this year at quarterback, but you have all the draft picks to help you close that gap potentially.
And your coach you trust to the nth degree to get the most out of Darnold, who
and then
worked with one of your disciples in Minnesota.
Okay, let's go there.
I think we figured it out.
I like that. Stafford to the Giants, Darnold to LA. Jets end up with Wilson or Fields. Whoever
Steelers
doesn't
end up with Wilson
stay
or
with the
Fields.
Steelers. So we're just going par for the Steelers with Wilson or Fields most likely.
Now, where's this leave Tennessee and Cleveland and Vegas? Probably one of them at least is a rookie.
So here's the thing with I'm gonna lump Tennessee and Las Vegas together because in mock drafts they're the most common landing spots for Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But also if you threw in like for Las Vegas they have O'Connell, but would Brady bring in Rodgers? Would that be like a let's go stopgap Rodgers with our rookie quarterback? Because we still don't know if that player is going to fall to us at pick number 6 in the draft, if it's Shedeur Sanders. I do like Sanders to Las Vegas. I think everything kind of fits there. I think he's kind of wants to be there for some reason. It seems like a match. Brady could look at Sanders and be like, yeah, you know, I can see some of myself in him, the way he wins.
Yeah,
it's like dynamically athletic, or it's not like a laser show, but a pocket passer, you know. So Sanders to Las Vegas, I like. O'Connell probably stopgap, but also could Rodgers end up there? Would Rodgers want to go to the Raiders? Would Rodgers want to go to Tennessee? And that wouldn't change anything for the Titans, even if they wanted Ward, but it would also help them be like, we're going to do something else and not draft Ward at 1 because we think there's other blue chippers here, and we're going to go with Rodgers for a short term.
If I'm him, I'd rather go to Tennessee than Cleveland or certainly New Orleans if the car got traded or – I mean, I heard something that I don't believe at all. The Colts are interested in Rodgers to back up and fight with Richardson. I'm like, ugh. I mean, they're nothing alike, and they're so. I mean, like, what's going on here? I mean, unless you're going to trade Richardson, you know,
I would say Cousins more than Rodgers in that scenario potentially.
And I guess in the team we haven't brought up in a long time since the beginning of the podcast. I feel like the Browns get the sloppiest of seconds. They're the
sloppiest situation, for sure.
Yeah.
But they're picking 2, so they might say themselves.
They could screw us all up, you know, and take 1.
That's the thing is, so the Browns might sit there at 2 and say, look, we're never going to convince a veteran because we just traded Myles Garrett. You know, we're sitting here in April. Myles Garrett's gone now. We've traded maybe some other pieces away. Maybe we even trade somebody else during the draft that's a veteran player. We're rebuilding. What's Cousins going to do for us anyway? And the only way that we're going to rebuild this thing is by drafting and developing. So Cam Ward,
I would do it next year if I were them, because I think they're going to be terrible. But I hear your point. No one's going to be calling them.
Can you afford anybody? Here's the thing: you can't.
That's why I go to Cousins. Cousins costs nothing
if he gets released.
Yeah. Only if he gets released. I'm not trading for him in his contract, but I'll do the Russell Wilson $1 million deal.
So you would have to be like, sweetheart, short term, cheap deal. It's the only marriage of Cousins,
Russell Wilson
to start, and
because nobody else might call Cousins. I mean, they might just look at each other like, I'm a musical chair. You're the dude that has to sit on me. I have no money. You don't need any money. If you want to play football this year and start, that's your only option. Again, they're the last musical chair.
So in this scenario, I think Rodgers is the odd man out because he's like basically retiring.
Yeah, maybe he just hosts Jeopardy or something.
Yeah, so let's go Cousins to Cleveland. We got the Stafford trade going on to the New York Giants. Jets, Rodgers already left there. So you're going Fields or Wilson, maybe Cousins as a stopgap potentially for the Jets. I like Sanders to Las Vegas. Maybe Ward falls to you there, but I feel like that's the most likely rookie landing spot. If I had to bet on one team that's going to end up with one of the rookie quarterbacks, I'd probably go Las Vegas because one of those top blue chippers probably not going to be there for you, and you're going to have an opportunity to draft a quarterback without moving up potentially. Tennessee, Ward, is that where we're going with Tennessee? Just quarterback, QB1,
maybe Rodgers.
So maybe Rodgers.
Ward's going to land somewhere, of course.
And both could go together. Rodgers and Ward could go together.
Absolutely. As good Cousins and Ward or, 100%. Old guy and Ward.
And for the Steelers, I've got written down either Wilson or Fields, whichever they choose. The other we got in New York with the Jets. And there's this dude Shug that you've been talking a lot about. Maybe you're going mid-round quarterback as well, right? Because the Steelers got to add a couple.
Especially if it's Wilson, the mentor and a third-round pick. If it's Fields, I might just roll the dice like crazy and maybe you bottom out and deal with it next year. I know we're up against it, and maybe this is even a tomorrow conversation, but the thing that could screw up all this is if the Saints cut Carr, maybe he's a Jet and
or a Steeler.
Or a Steeler, but I think they'd prefer Wilson or Fields than Carr.
Just keep their guy. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just the immobility, I don't think is what you're after. But maybe Carr ends up with the Jets, something like that. But I don't know if the Saints would be buyers. If they were a seller, maybe they end up with Cousins for nothing or something like that, and just totally punt this year with Rattler.
And I think by the best I can tell, I think our recommendation is not going to happen with the Saints, and we should probably know that.
No, I think they're pushing more
to the kick the can down the road thing into eternity, essentially there, which we'll see.
So it's funny. I 2 days ago, I tagged Jason from Over the Cap, who's a superstar cap guy, and just said, what cap situation's worse, Saints or Browns? And he said Saints by 1,000. Yeah. So then I wrote back, they'll move on from Carr, right? And he says, and I don't know what his connections are, but he says, I think they're going to try to win it with him again. I'm like, that's so dumb. But if you don't ever learn from your lessons, I mean, maybe I thought that a year ago. I mean, who knows?
To where they are currently. And it seems, what's the
definition of insanity?
Yeah. Was it Mark Twain that said it? I don't know, but yeah.
Keep doing it over and over. Right.
Expect different results. That's where we are with the Saints. You got to blow it up, but I don't know.
Does Cousin or Rodgers retire? Or so, I mean, something weird will happen to influence this too. Someone will get hurt or retire, or
If Cousins is released and isn't just an expensive backup for the Falcons, I will say if he's cheap, he could be a fit for a lot of teams. And don't be shocked don't be shocked if he goes back to hang out with Shanahan and just be a backup to Brock Purdy either.
Yeah. Or maybe ends up with McVay. They were together, or he's the total placeholder. Him and Sanders end up in the same place, or him and Ward end up in the same place, much like Atlanta did.
Right. Yep. Exactly. All right. There we go.
Crazy. I think we figured it out, though.
It's simple. It's you should see what my notebook looks like from all of this.
Oh, I can imagine.
It looks like the ramblings of a mad person, and that's what the NFL offseason does to folks like us. All right. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Get those mailbag questions in. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.